Okay, so this is Taz with Positive Out Loud, and I have a very special, wonderful guest today that I'm going to interview. Her name is Anna Nummy, and we're going to talk about things that you would be interested in, such as what it's like to become an entrepreneur while having two children, while having a baby, and just talk about the journey and the challenges and everything that came up for her. And because it's a lot, I'm sure it's a heck of a lot. So why don't we start? I have the first question I have for you is what made you decide to, first of all, let's start with where were you before you decided to become an entrepreneur?
Well, first, thanks, Tess, for having me on.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess a little background about me would be important for answering that question. I had gotten my undergraduate degree in biotech from Michigan State University. And I was working I first out of college worked for a private company, worked there for about 5 years. And then I worked at, transitioned to another company that was public and worked there for about 5 years. And in those 5-year blocks, I learned a ton. Like I did a bunch of different stuff at my first job out of college. I was, new projects, new things, growing. Same was true for the next job. It was a completely different thing that I was doing. And so I was experiencing a lot of growth and I had a lot of satisfaction in the work that I was doing. But the reason I left my first job is the same reason I left the second job, which was I kind of had plateaued on the learning stuff. And I really just wasn't satisfied. And for a long time, I had been.
In case everybody's wondering what all that background noise is, we have Noah with us. And like I said, this is what it's like to be an entrepreneur, right?
I should have introduced Abraham. Yeah, if you guys hear some
Abraham, I'm sorry.
complaining or some percussion and some background, that's my 15-month-old. Anyway, so I was saying, the reason I left my first job was really the reason I left my second job. And it had to do a lot with just lack of satisfaction, feeling ready to do something different. And I had looked for a long time, actually, for different jobs within my career. I'm in Michigan, so we're kind of an agricultural state. There's not a lot of biotech stuff here, but that's what, my education was in. So I was in this weird scenario where I had a very highly desirable skill set, but not a lot of options locally. And I really didn't want to move out of state, blah, blah, blah. And so I just started looking at what, it was very logical, really. It was like, well, what could I do that seemed a reasonable effort and a reasonable way to sort of do something. So I started looking for classes and stuff, and my brother is in the online space. He's a UX designer, and so I'd ask him about different courses and classes and things like that. And I was, shopped around for a while to try and find something, and even still was still pretty naive about, that whole process, really. But settled on something, took my first online course, and, the new job was born. It was blossoming anyway. Yeah.
Correct, right. And so when you decided to make that move from having a job to becoming your own boss, how did that feel? What were the emotions behind that?
Wow. Well, man, so it's very alluring, to think about being your own boss, and it sounds like that would be great and fantastic and all that stuff. But I have to tell you, I am still processing what that means and how it feels, because even though I've been self-employed now for over a year, I still sometimes do this reality check of is this real? But say that
Abraham's yeah, it's real.
It's real. Yeah. I would say that at the beginning, it was a lot of what really pushed me was that I was feeling actually sort of angry and very frustrated about where I was in my current job.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, actually was talking to you, whether you know this or not, Taz and I met in Las Vegas at a conference. So
When was that? About maybe 3 years ago?
June of 2016.
Okay.
So about 2 years ago. So anyway, we had met there, but what was I saying? I got distracted because I'm not this is what it's like a day in life.
Yeah, exactly.
The feelings associated. So, but actually was talking to you, and I think you had mentioned Eckhart Tolle to me, and I ended up listening to a bunch of just freebie YouTube stuff and kind of familiarizing myself with him. And I read The Power of Now. Mm-hmm. And I realized that the only person responsible for that was myself. Being angry and frustrated, it was almost like at that time I was putting on like that was someone else's fault and not my own. And then, once I realized I can do something about this. This is something I have ownership of. It was almost like a switch because I was actually went through a really bad anger phase when I was at my last job. And just kind of taking responsibility of that was a huge shift for me.
So that's great because there's a lot of people out there right now who are not liking their jobs and they want to try something and they're looking and they're searching online and they're like, God, it would be great because there's so many different things out there that people can do. Yeah. Just to realize that you're going to go through that process of being angry that you feel like you're stuck, right? Is that how you felt?
Yeah. Yeah. I felt a lot like blaming other people for my lack of satisfaction.
Right.
And then, the other thing is when I was looking for the thing to do, I didn't know what the freak I wanted to do. And I feel like so many people have that. Like they think they need to know what they're going to do for the next 20 years of their life. But I eventually realized, and I think in some ways I have this more innately in me, is first of all, I'm a risk taker. My husband balances me out, but I'm the risk taker. So like trying things wasn't, as big of a leap for me. But I think a lot of times people are really paralyzed by feeling like they don't know what to do. Like they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And I think like this clip from Oprah, love that Oprah. She has this thing about, don't think about what, you don't have to see the 10-year plan. Just what are your next right moves?
Right.
And I come back to that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having a job and having that security in our mind, in my mind, I'm sure in a lot of people's minds, is that it feels so like, gosh, I can't leave this. This is secure. I have health benefits. I have a salary that comes in. And being an entrepreneur, you just never know when you're going to get paid. You never know when you're going to have that next client. So there's a lot of risks that are involved. But you decided to take that leap after a while. I mean, you did it, and here you are now. It's
interesting that you say that because I will say, too, especially in my industry, the biotech industry, it's relatively volatile. People get laid off all the time, whatever. Okay. And I know, so here's the thing that I've also learned is that people look at their day job as a thing that's very secure. But at the end of the day, they are not really in control of their position. Mm-mm. And you are at, the mercy of maybe the economy or whatever. You might get fired. You might get laid off because of something. And so it's interesting that actually when you are on an entrepreneurial path and you have that control, you actually have more control because you are the only person responsible for generating the income that you need, for doing the things that you need to do. And let me tell you, it is super not easy. It's just not easy. So that was kind of also almost like a mindset shift that I made, that People talk about their day job being the thing that is secure, but the reality is that they're still not the one in charge, and they talk about the health benefits and the other benefits. And another thing that I've really come to appreciate, and like I said, it's still like I'm still realizing all of this a year-ish into this, but the benefits that I have are like, you can't put a price tag on that. Like, I can't put a price tag on being able to have the flexibility that I want to do what I need to do, being able to spend more time with my kids. I just came back from like an 8-day vacation. My husband and I haven't done that since we got married. Let me just say that.
Wow.
I mean, just having and I was still plugged in and I did some work, I mean, you don't, yes, it was a good vacation. So
what helped you with that mindset? How did you switch from, having the job to being an entrepreneur? What helped you get through that mindset of being open and being flexible?
Are you asking me like how I came to sort of like how I'm flexible? Like, can you wait? What do you mean?
You said you had a mindset that shifted through this process. Yeah. Was there certain things courses that you took, or somebody that you listened to, or did it just come innately within you that your mindset just kind of shifted into becoming more of an entrepreneur?
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I would say that a lot of it was I'm still embracing, and some of it comes with taking the leap a little bit. But it's the people in my life, because it's kind of great. The internet's a fantastic place, and you can read all the books in the world and all the things that you want. And I think there's a lot of great resources out there for people in terms of that. But I would say that I got to the mindset shift that I'm at now anyway, from like the friendship that I have with people that have done this already. I have a very dear friend and mentor, and he basically coaches me, I mean, we have weekly calls, and it's really interesting because his whole, I mean, I'm sure you've heard this before. It's like 90% of it is mindset, 10% of it is skill set, and you can outsource skill set.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, so I would have to thank him for helping me see some of these shifts. But it's also like living it that's helped me. Like I said, I still feel like I'm realizing these things. It wasn't just a couple of weeks ago that I was thinking about like how blessed I am to have the, quote unquote benefits that I do. And people think about like medical benefits, for instance. It's like, I can provide those to myself with my income. It's just the matter of where it's coming from. So anyway, I don't know if that totally answers your question. I mean, certainly a lot of reading and introspection. I have daily routine that I do, and I put all these things in place to sort of support myself, but a lot of it is the people that you spend your time with, because that's going to make a huge difference. You always hear people talking about like, oh, who are you hanging out with?
Right.
Who are you spending your time with? So
you definitely want to spend time with people who have that bigger picture and that positivity and the hustle, and the ones that want to make it happen. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think people are really quick to take advice from people online that they don't necessarily know very well. And might sound like a really good sound bit, but like, how successful is that person really? So being careful who you take advice from is important.
There's a lot of wannabes out there. And you definitely have to be careful with who you listen to. And there's so many things out there where people are just trying to sell something just to sell something so they can make money, and they haven't actually been down that journey. So yeah,
it's funny that you say that, because when you think about it, you know, there's only like 3% of people in business who are doing this whatever level. But you know as well as I do, because you and I are both in all these marketing worlds online. We're part of all these different groups. There's so many people that tout their success, but the reality is that if it's, I mean, backed up by fact that it's like 3% of people, right? So how many of the people who are saying that are really the real deal, you know? So yeah, I don't know.
So let's take this in another direction. So I know that you had Abraham through this whole process. So how did you manage that, and what challenges did you face, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Well, he's my second. Ian's about, they're like 2 years apart. Oh, bunk your head. They're like 2 years apart-ish. So Ian is like 3.5. Abraham's 15 months. Right. So I had at least had, you know, already been in like sleep deprivation mode with the first one. You know, it's a challenging transition having your first kid and not knowing all of the parent things. So at least I had, you know, experience of having a kid before.
That's a plus.
Yeah. How did I do it? Well, another little background snippet, you know, how I was mentioning earlier, people talk about their jobs being secure. Well, my last job, I was actually laid off. They closed the division that I was in. So I was 8 months pregnant with Abraham when that happened. And I had reduced my hours I was still full-time, but I was 4 days a week. So I had reduced my hours because my business was picking up and I wanted to focus more of my energy there. But I wasn't doing this full-time. Okay. And so I had about a month before he came, because, you know, my babies like to stay in a long time, to work on my business. And the challenges with that were, I actually was probably the only person smiling when they laid everybody off, because, you know, sometimes the universe gives you the kick in the butt that you want.
Exactly.
And I had, you know, I'd gotten a severance because I'd worked there 5 years. And so that helped sustain me while I first had Abraham and was transitioning into really trying to like build up my business and stuff. So I think it might be a little bit different of a story if I didn't have that, only because, you know, I wasn't full-time, you know, business stuff wasn't full-time. I hadn't really scaled it very much to the point where it was sustainable financially. So that was a good kick in the butt, and it was a blessing at the same time. So that helped. And honestly, what I was doing at the time was running around trying to figure out how to get clients. Like I'm good at the things that I do, but how do I find the clients? So that was a big challenge for me too. You know.
So how did you find the clients? What method was working best for you once you figured all that out?
Well, enter in another course. I've taken I've invested quite a bit in my education. So what I do marketing and advertising, right? So it's not necessarily a super high cost. It's not like I'm making a physical product that requires manufacture. So in some ways it's a low barrier of entry to do something like this in terms of investment. However, that being said, I've invested like thousands in online courses in the last 2 years. And education has actually been one of my largest expenses every year when I do my taxes, just to give you an idea. Right. But I took a course actually that was about client acquisition. And so that's how I met my mentor.
Cool.
Who coaches me. And so it's really about identifying the ideal clients that you want to work with and understanding the language they speak in, right, and then talking to them in that language so that it makes sense to them, you know?
So we'll just put this out there for everybody out there. So if you're having a hard time finding clients, what I'll do is I'll put a link below the video and we will let your mentor get some more business that way.
Sure.
Yeah, so that'd be cool.
Cool.
So it's awesome that you're able to get that course and that worked out for you right away. So where are you now and how is your business looking now? I mean, are you doing it full time now?
Yeah, I am. I'm in a transition period. So, as you operate and I'm still new in the game at this. I've only been doing I've been doing marketing for about 2 years, but that being said, like all the other business pieces that come into that, that's just knowing how to do the marketing is just one piece I was just talking about.
Right.
I'm in transition. I had been serving a certain type of clientele, and I've just learned over time that it's not the best fit for me, right? So the process is doing market research to figure out, okay, well, what's the next thing? And so I'm doing a bit of a shift, and every time there's a transition, there's a little bit of letting the old die and growing the new. And so I'm kind of in another challenging phase. And, all that stuff brings up all these like mindset things too. It really does, and it's like, well, I know, okay, I've done this before. So if I look at the facts, I know I can do it again, but I'm, still challenged about, okay, well, I need X number of clients this month, and I don't want to take any more of this kind of client. And the thing is, I built a sales pipeline for a certain type of client that I no longer want to serve. So I'm rebuilding it. And, so it's fine, but it's challenging. And it's more challenging because of the mindset stuff in general.
Right.
Because you doubt yourself and you go through these cycles of, crap, you get that person on your shoulder telling you suck, because when we grow, it's uncomfortable. When you're uncomfortable, you know that there's going to be some type of breakthrough coming up that's going to be amazing, which is great. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's how big businesses become big businesses. They have to keep taking risks and learning and growing and learning. It's like it goes like this, right? Not like this.
Yep. So I'm in a transition, and along with that, I've just been able to be more and more of like the observer that I need to be, to see that little voice on my shoulder when it's coming up, and recognize that sooner and sooner. Because I think a lot of people think about, like fear, for instance, is like in an instinctual sense is a bad thing, because you don't want to get eaten by predator. But if you can reframe fear to be a signal that, oh, well, I'm probably just taking the next right steps that I need to do. It's not easy to do a transition. Oh, I have this whole pipeline built, but I'm choosing this other thing. It's not easy. It's a little scary. But if you can reframe fear and think about it as an indication that you're probably making the right next move, right next move, that helps too. So, yeah.
And even if it takes you in a direction you decide, well, that's not quite where I want to go, you can always go into another direction, right?
Yes. Right. And that's another thing that when it comes to, I know, he's complaining. When it comes to failure, right? People.
What is that? What is that really?
That's the thing. Like, we're really ingrained with failure. Our society's ingrained. We're raised that failure is not a good thing, but the reality is that failure just means it didn't give you the results you wanted, and all you have to do is change the plan,
right?
So that you can get a different result. I mean, true failure is giving up, right? It's not doing the next thing. So it can, because at some point in our lives we decided that like failing was a bad thing. Like it's so fantastic to have kids. This is another thing about having kids. As you know, like, Ian will say something, that's my oldest, he'll say something like, I growed it. And I'll be like, oh, you mean you grew it? And then he'll repeat me, yes, I grew it, right? So, he'll say things in the wrong tense. He gets stuff wrong all the time. He doesn't care. And when I let him know what it is the right way to say something or to express something, he's like, okay, I'll just do that now. He's not a failure because he chose the wrong words, right? But somewhere along the line, we decided that when we didn't do something quote unquote right or correct, it was a bad thing. And so, reframing that has been, is a constant practice actually, because it's very easy when you've for 30 some years been like, I'm a failure because this didn't work, So
it's like creating those different neural pathways in our mind to have that mind shift. I know Apple yesterday was talking about that exact thing, and it just came out of the blue. It's like, where does this stuff come from with our kids, right? She's like, we all make mistakes and none of us are perfect and it's okay. She's my little angel over there talking to me.
Yep. And it's funny because with Ian, we've been really big on like saying, people aren't bad, kids aren't bad, they just make bad choices. And everybody makes bad choices, everyone. And so we've been really big on doing that, because like saying that and expressing things that way, because that's another thing. Like our subconscious and our conscious mind are funny things. And your subconscious mind, when it hears, you are bad, it thinks you really are bad, not just that you made a bad choice. And so it's very black and white down there in the subconscious. It's like, you have to be careful. Words are important. You have to be careful what, how you express things. And when you have a kid, I think you're really you get more aware of those kinds of things. Well, at least for me, I've become a lot more aware about how I express things. So
exactly. I have too. I get that. So, so another question, what do you do on a daily basis to get yourself set up for the day, like to get yourself grounded? Is there certain things that you do every day?
Yeah, certainly weekdays. Weekends get a little weird because I do shift more into like family time. But when Abe naps, he's in daycare 3 days a week. Yes. But when he naps in the morning, I do my morning routine. And that consists of journaling, like a standard notebook page. Okay. Anything I want, brain dump, talk about a thing that's bothering me, talk about nothing, whatever comes up gets written about. And I also do, I have 2 gratitude journals. One is dedicated to like, every day I do like 10 new things that I'm grateful for. And, 5 new things I'm grateful for, 10 that I'm grateful for that haven't happened yet. Like, I'm so grateful that this client is awesome, whatever, whatever it is. And then I actually
bringing your future into the present, right?
Yeah, right. And then like gratitude is such a hugely important thing. And I have one dedicated just to my husband, because I feel like in relationships, you get more of what you focus on. And so I choose to specifically do something that's like about him every day.
That's really cool. And you don't hear that very often.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I got that from Grant Cardone.
Really? Wow.
In one of his books, I'm actually not really a fan of his sales methods these days. Right. But I used to, when I was first doing all this stuff and I was trying to figure out the sales piece, I read a couple of his books, and he had mentioned that in there, like a gratitude journal about a spouse kind of a thing. And I'm like, that's a fantastic idea. So I've been doing
he does have a great relationship, it seems like, with his spouse, for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing that I do is add in 10 minutes of prayer, meditation, 10 minutes of reading anything I'd like. And so that, what I just described, takes about an hour. But sometimes if I'm reading something and I want to go more than 10 or 15 minutes, I do. Or if I want to meditate or pray for more than 10 or 15 minutes, then I will. I just kind of go with the flow. But doing those things daily have really supported me and have centered me to start my day and to, get things, it's intentional, right? It's an intentional choice to start my day that way. And I just feel so much more grounded when I do all of that. So it's been
Well, you're connecting to you, and I think so many women out there in general who have children, have families, a lot of them just get up and get ready, and because they know they have to get their kids ready, dressed, get ready for breakfast, for school,
Yep.
whatever it is, and they forget all about themselves. And then that's where you can really go down that rabbit hole of
It's super
frustration.
easy to do. And there are no rules about a routine. You can do it whenever you want. And I actually, because the kids are around in the morning and I feed them breakfast and I pack their lunches and stuff for daycare, I just focus on everybody else. And then when things have settled down, I do my routine. People like sometimes get obsessed with, I need to do this thing first thing in the morning because I read it in a book somewhere. But if you're going to be in conflict with that from the very beginning, you're probably not going to do it. And it's better if you just do it. So do it in a way that supports you, in a time that supports you. And,
because you never know what the day's going to bring. Right? They might wake up feeling sick or whatever, and you have to be there. I mean,
yep.
Who knows?
Yep.
So, and that kids like to wake up early.
Mine are up at 6. So yeah.
At what time?
6.
6? Oh, wow.
It's usually sometimes 6:30, but
I'm pretty lucky. I'm more like 7:30.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what is your, can you tell us a little bit about what you do so we can let everybody know out there what it is that you're doing, what the name of your business is and your website?
Yeah, cool. So what I help do is get butts in seats is what I like to say, right? I really help the businesses that I help get more clients and customers, right? And sometimes that means helping them get a client that's going to pay them monthly. Sometimes it means someone that buys something once. It just depends. So getting more paying customers really is what it's all about. And I do that using whatever makes sense for that company. Some people will want to do search engine optimization, which is just a fancy way of saying ranking on Google or search engines, so they'll want to do things like that for their website, and then AdWords, so paid advertising, or Facebook ads, right? So it just depends on what makes sense for that company and what they're currently doing. My company's name is Align Local, and it's alignlocal.com. So
cool.
pretty simple. Footnote, have you ever heard that quote, the cobbler's children have the, worst shoes, something like that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so yeah, my website's not some fantastical, beautifully designed thing. It just is what it is, right?
It's simple. It's simple, right?
It's simple. Yep. Keep it simple.
And so what is some advice you would give to somebody out there that's just starting out, that really wants to start their own business, who may have kids? What would you tell them if they had some questions for you?
Well, I would say that entrepreneurship really isn't for everybody. It's really not. People, I will say, like, when I go on vacation, I'm still plugged in. It's not a treacherous thing, but I'm responsible for all of the movement of all of the things. And so I have to schedule time when I'm on vacation to, I need to do this for an hour today. And maybe one day it's only 15 minutes, but I would say it is the most exhilarating and satisfying and at the same time daunting and terrifying thing to do. So it's not for everybody because it really does require a lot of commitment ongoing all of the time. And I would say that it's funny, in my last job, this music is sorry.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. One of the things about me and that I had recognized even in my last job was that I freaking never give up. I never give up on things. And so even I'd be working on this pain in the ass project, I would never give up. And it was just like there was always more options or ways to do things. And so I've always had that sort of stick-to-itness. And I think that I hear people struggle all the time, like, I'm just ready to quit. I've never felt that way. I don't think that's uncommon though. I mean, I think that is uncommon. Most people feel like they want to quit at some point. So if someone is entering this journey and they're like, holy crap, I think I just can't do this, you know, give yourself some breathing room and realize that that's a very common thing to experience. And you just got to keep going. Like, you just have to be really committed.
You could be this close to that breakthrough, and then you missed it if you quit.
Yeah, totally. And I guess the other thing would be like, I can't stress the importance of the mindset, because even in the last 6 months, I have found myself like, oh, wow, look at that. In retrospect, I totally like sabotaged myself against this thing, right? Like, we do things unconsciously all the time. And so having a better understanding of that and like being the observer more and more. And the reason I do those morning routine things is all about mindset. So I would say that is the most important thing to keep in mind. So, and if you don't think you can do it, then you never will, right? So
you have to have that self-motivation, that never give up attitude, and the mindset of being able to be really self-aware. You know what's really going on. What is it that you're doing to yourself that's blocking you from having this or that, right?
Yep, totally.
And it takes,
like what beliefs do you have about certain things? Like, is making a lot of money really hard to do? Does it require really hard work? You know, things like that. Or I don't know. I mean, there's so many things I can that one specifically has come up for me. Like, I started doing super, super well, and it was like, this is too good to be true. This is too easy.
Oh, no, you didn't do that to yourself.
And so it's one of those things where then you realize, what did you do after that you can look back in 3 months and be like, okay. So, you know, I'm still a work in progress.
Oh, we all are. That's for sure. So, I think this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on, for letting me interview you, because so many people are going through this process.
Yeah.
I think this is really going to help them out, and that's what Positive Out Loud is all about, is taking people through that journey of becoming more aware of what's really going on in their lives, and just to go for it. So, and you did it. You're awesome.
Yeah. Still working on doing it. I am still working on doing it. You gotta, you know, everyone, there's that begin with the end in mind thing. Like, what's your why is another really huge, important thing, you know. And for someone like me, once you get a taste of working for yourself and you have a better grasp of the possibilities, it's like, it's hard to look at going back to working for someone else. And so that's another motivation that you can use once you're in this scenario, is like, you know, it's more motivation, you know, once you're there. So
why don't we end with that question? What is your why?
I first started all of this because I wanted to, it's big picture stuff. And I'm still learning and understanding what that means specifically for me, right? Don't need to know the 10-year plan. What are the next right moves? And I've always felt like I've had some higher calling that I'm working towards. Don't know exactly what that was, right? I am so much closer than I was 2 years ago to understanding what that is. I also have always wanted like more time and flexibility with my family. After I had Ian, I went back to work at like 10 weeks. And being a nursing mom, like, that's just so hard. And so I had, you know, the universe granted this. I had always wished after I have my second, I'd love to be able to just be home with him for at least the first 6 months, because for a breastfeeding mom, that's such an important and critical time. And it's just, you know, and I've had that, you know, and so being able to be there more for my kids, especially in their young developmental age, is so, so important. It's so critical. But so that was the main one part, and the other part was like the higher calling thing, right? And I'm just taking next steps to figure out what that is. And I personally feel I'm a mom of 2 boys, and I don't know that that's an accident. I think there's some sort of grand universal design in this, because
Mm-hmm.
I feel very called to help young boys, especially,
Mm-hmm.
be more exposed to nature, and also really to understand and have a better grasp of what it means to be a boy, to be a man. Ironically, I'm a woman, right? But, I think maybe my husband will end up, I don't know, who knows? Maybe he'll end up being on mission with me on this too. Because, it's interesting that, and I'm going off on a small tangent here, but I feel I've seen very much like, schools are very much designed more for like the temperament of a girl, where, it's harder for boys to sit still. They express themselves in different ways. Like boys and girls they're different, and their needs are a little different in terms of how they are just built. And we should celebrate those differences. And I often feel like people are always trying to put, it's in this generic box of you should be this way or that way or the other. And so I feel like a lot of times I've seen a lot of stuff that's just heart-wrenching, pulls at the heartstring.
Right.
And so I think in some capacity I will, at the very least be on mission to help kids get more outdoor play and time, boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually in the process of applying to be a Tinkergarten instructor, which is like an outdoor classroom thing,
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like this might be a next right move for me,
Right.
and they have a really long process, but it's like outdoor classroom and learning through play. And for me,
That's awesome.
Yeah, nature has always been very healing and very supportive of me. And so I think kids, they get the less and less recess play, they get less and less time to do those things. And I think it's like, it should be the opposite. So why not do something that encourages that, why not at least explore that idea and see what that's about? So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. My nephew goes to the outdoor preschool. He's outside all day long, which I think is, even if it's raining or whatever, just out in nature, and seems pretty grounded.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah, they have like the classes go 4 seasons, and only in extreme weather do they cancel. So if it's raining out, we have class outside when it's raining. Wear your rain jacket. So
exactly.
It's a cool concept, and I think our kids need more of that stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again, Anna, for your time, for the interview, and for going a little bit deeper and talking about what it is that you really want to do. And thank you for taking the risks that you take, and for being an example, being an inspiration.
Thanks, Taz.
All right. Have an awesome day.
Yeah, you too.
We'll talk soon.
Yep,
all right.
see ya.
Bye-bye.